everybody, it's Dennis O'Brien back on Let's Talk About It. We're here tonight with a guest who hasn't been on our show yet, I don't think. She is Chelsea Charrier. She is with CLIC. Chelsea, what's CLIC stand for?
CLIC stands for the Commercially Licensed Cooperative Kitchen, and we are a emerging food hub in Windham, Connecticut.
I am so glad that I asked you to do that so I didn't mess it up. Sometimes I mess up the acronyms.
And I'm Susan Johnson here with Dennis O'Brien, my co-host, and we're thrilled to have you here, Chelsea, to talk about CLIC and all the great stuff that CLIC does. And what an innovative thing it is to have CLIC here. And I just have to say, I can't... We have done such a great job here in this town, having CLIC here, supporting CLIC, and in the region, because CLIC is really regional and it's statewide.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just want to say one other thing about that. They tried to do one in New Haven, and they couldn't do it, but we did it here first.
Not even with Yale support?
Not even with Yale support.
Yale in the background, anyway?
Exactly.
It's a novel idea here in the Eastern Connecticut or Connecticut, New England region.
It is, and it was wonderful. Phoebe started it, and she, of course, teaches some agricultural things at UConn. And but this was a concept she had worked on very, very hard. And let me just say, it is hard work to get something very brand new like this going.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of, Phoebe was educating her students about sustainable food systems, and there wasn't much to show or bring them to see in our area or region, and that's why CLIC was born, to kind of, walk the talk.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
It's out on Club Road. It used to be, I think, the Knights of Columbus.
Yes,
at one time.
Indeed, it did.
Quite a while ago. CLIC has been in place now for what? Since 2008 or 9?
Well, the idea was born around then, but we didn't move into that building until around 2015, 2016.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, we were, around when Phoebe came up with the idea. We had her on the show a couple times, probably twice anyway. And I thought it was amazing, what she put together. I mean, we've seen people do other things like that, but it's not easy.
No.
And we've been involved in things like that ourselves, and tangentially, if not directly, although I did start the girls softball program in Willimantic for Little League 40 years ago.
Holy cow.
And that was when this Little League guy came to me and said, we had a daughter who was 13, she had played Little League baseball, and he said, we could have a softball program for Little League. I said, gee, I didn't know that. I played Little League back in New Britain back in the 50s. I did not know they had the capacity to do girls softball, and I was just thrilled. And it was, I did initiate that. It was probably an easier thing to do than what Phoebe did, but you know what? It wasn't that easy.
Yeah, I believe it.
You always have to get help.
Yes.
And you have to be somebody who's good at getting people to help and selling the idea and, getting people to give their time. And I'll say this, Chelsea, back then, having been involved in politics and all kinds of things here for over 40 years, it was easier to get people to volunteer back then than it has been ever since your era, the IT era, computers and 6,000 channels on television, whether you use, however way you get it through Netflix or Hulu.
I just want to say, this is such an innovative program, and one of the reasons we invited Chelsea here is to talk about how CLIC is doing all these different things, and one of the things that it's doing is it's expanding its composting program, and that was in the Willimantic Chronicle back on August 7th, and that's when I gave CLIC a call. And I said, hey, do you want to come and talk about the composting program? Because that's something that people here have been talking about for the last couple of years, trying to work on how do we do composting here. And I know that we've passed some composting legislation last year. Representative Jamie Foster put together something that's really quite innovative for farm composting, and that generates energy as well for the farms. And so I thought this would be a great show. Plus, you're raising money this time, so
yes,
wanted to make sure that we got all that information in there.
Yeah.
So we could start with, why don't we start with a little bit about the fundraiser and the deadlines, and then we'll go into the composting, and then from there we'll go back over all the fundraising stuff. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we go back over things like that because sometimes people tune in late or they tune in early and they don't listen to the whole show.
Sounds good.
But if they hear you on the show and you're talking about composting, I'm sure they will stay with it.
Tune in.
They will. I
They'll
mean,
tune-
it's a hot button issue in so many areas in our town. And of course, we all want to finally get to that point where we're all composting, but it's
Absolutely.
going to take a very, very lot of different angles from the top of the how we get the stuff composted locally, training people, getting the equipment so that it can be done in case somebody makes a mistake, all that kind of stuff. So, but let's start with the fundraising. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Sustainable CT has a match campaign where they're generously offering 1.5 to every dollar that we raise. So 1.5. So we're looking to raise 6,000 with the hope that Sustainable CT will match us for 9,000. And that initiative is to support us in our overall vision to expand our composting program. And the hope is to have all community events like at Gilson or Third Thursday or different wonderful community events we have in Willimantic to participate in sustainable waste management. And also, we have a program called our Waste Not tents, which are at those events, and we're looking to support our that program as well. And it looks like purchasing new equipment, educational materials, and just increasing the capacity of taking that compost.
So
Question about that waste not tent, because I wanted to make sure that we understand what we are maybe throwing away or maybe not really properly recycling. What is a waste not tent? What goes in it?
Yeah, so one of the terms we're using is waste diversion. So diverting our compost and recycling out of our landfill. So our Waste Not tents are at community events. Wyndham Community Food Network started the Sustainable Initiative with those Waste Not tents in 2017. And they've been at Third Thursday ever since. So we have 3 Third Thursday Waste Not tents that are set up, and basically they support all of the people eating and enjoying the event in doing it sustainably. So diverting the food into compost, the recycling into recycling, and trying to minimize what goes into the landfill.
yeah, I just wanted you to give us starting it with square one, a composting 101. What is composting? Why is it important? And just to explain to people out there who may not know, because there are a lot of people who don't know, and I must admit I'm not an expert on it. I know it's good,
Yes.
but I don't know all the details, and I'm really eager to learn. So, and I'm sure there's people out there like me. So, if you would just start at the beginning with composting, what is it, and why is it important, and go from there. And
Yes.
then we'll talk some more about the fundraising because we want to keep repeating that.
Yeah, absolutely. So composting is diverting food waste, like kitchen food scraps or any food after we eat.
Plate waste.
Yeah, any plate waste into a compost bin. And what happens there is when it goes to the landfill, the food kind of rots and creates emissions of greenhouse gases that we do not want, that are feeding into our climate crisis. But when it goes into compost, it decomposes in a way that it's eaten up by little bacteria, and then that actually is not creating emissions of the greenhouse gases and actually creates great soil for us to use for our gardens and nutrient dense soil, because all those vegetables that you're putting in the compost have a lot of nutrients, right? They have a lot of vitamins and minerals and things like that, and that's what goes into the soil when it rots. So then it creates really nutrient dense soil, which then goes into our plants.
I want to just add something about that, because if you have this composting from organic nutrients, you're not going to have to buy fertilizer. That's a
Exactly.
chemical. And
Yeah.
it's going a little bit of compare and contrast between chemical fertilizer and organic compost nutrients.
Where are you doing the composting? What is it?
Yeah, so CLIC's composting program started with funding last year, 2022, from the Connecticut Deep. And we kind of were looking at our internal composting program. So that looked like all our kitchen members. CLIC has over 35 food businesses operating. And as food service, about 30% in our landfill is food waste. So as a commercial kitchen with a bunch of food businesses, we have a responsibility of making sure that that food waste is put into the compost. And we're, our mission, a big part of our mission is sustainability. So making sure that that food waste that we're kind of creating, we're educating our food businesses. And so we created a composting site at Click to compost our kitchen members' food scraps and different things after service. And so that composting site is at Click.
So what if you expand and a great thing happens and more people want to compost? Is there going to be, are they all going to be able to bring their waste to Click?
Well,
or what is your
how do
you see the future?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is funding, right? And that's why we're kind of working on the Sustainable CT Match funding, because we want to expand it. And we have actually expanded it to the Third Thursday compost waste that I was talking about with those waste not tents. That compost comes to Click. And we've also expanded to a few other events, which this year we did Thread City Hop Fest because Willie Brew was so supportive of us, of our sustainability initiatives, and had us come and do the waste diversion at Thread City Hop Fest. And out of 650 pounds of waste, we diverted 550 into recycling and into compost. And so 550 pounds would have gone into the landfill. So that compost came to Click as well. And
okay, so is Click going to be at some point full?
Yes.
So you're going to need some land where you can. Okay, how much land is on the site at? Do you know the acreage at?
I think we're just about an acre, maybe a little bit more. It's not very big.
No, it's big, but not very big. Right.
Yeah, and the hope was of this first funding that we got through CT Deep was to kind of create a pilot program for a satellite site. So Click is kind of this satellite site that can take some of the compost and food waste, but then if we kind of create this pilot program that really works, we can offer that to other places in the community. There's other locations in the community that could be a composting site. So it's just about kind of showing them how to do that, and then residential maybe could happen. We also have been taking compost waste from a few other pilots. So we want to expand our composting program to more Main Street businesses, but right now we currently have Grounded. So we get about 2 5-gallon buckets of coffee grounds and different food waste from them every week, and they've been amazing in supporting the program. And then we also have been doing an opt-in program with Eastern for their dorms. So some of that compost waste is coming to us as well. And so we're taking as much as we can, and we're trying to expand with the Sustainable CT Match campaign. But eventually, yes, other parts of the town need to get involved.
So I did want to ask a little bit about, so once you have the compost waste, how are you disposing of it?
So right now, we're taking enough to kind of give to our community gardens, but we're hoping to create like a closed loop system. So we create the compost. If we're taking residential, or another satellite site is taking residential, then that goes back to the residential gardens. So the people that are feeding into the program are then receiving it for their gardens as well. Right now we've been creating compost just enough for Click, for our orchard, and for our raised beds, but we're hoping more and more compost we can kind of just close loop it to give out to the community.
Yeah, that's great. I know that they have a program in Newtown. And the Newtown program is residential, but the residents pay for it themselves. So one of the things that's been kind of a problem in terms of policy from my angle is to try and make sure when we do have composting, that the disposal process is being addressed, so you don't run into problems with, say, somebody throws in a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So what happens then?
So right now, that's me. I'm in there. I'm sorting that all out. And so that's another part of this funding, is to get people to pay people to do this messy job. It should not be volunteers. It's hard work.
Yes.
And so right now we're working with volunteers, but part of this funding is to create stipends for community members to kind of do this work, because it's inevitable. It's going to get contaminated. And so we want to make sure through education to kind of avoid that, but then also in the nitty-gritty of paying people to kind of make sure it's not happening.
One of the things that was a big holdup when I looked into the policy aspect of this was that if it was something that was being processed, say by not by Click, or having somebody as cautious as you addressing the possible mistakes people make when they toss things, that what would happen is the actual whole, whatever it was, amount that was provided to the processor would be sent back and would actually cost say if it was a town, it would cost the town money, which is why individuals are doing it right now.
Yeah.
And why we need to try and develop, I think, some technology to address the people's mistakes when they put something in with organic waste. They also learn that they shouldn't do that. So
Yeah, I mean, all this talk of AI, maybe that's something.
if Google can find everything you're doing online, maybe they can find the garbage and separate it out too.
Yeah.
Okay, Google, you've got your chore.
Well, nothing wrong with creating jobs for people.
Exactly.
Jobs doing things that are really, really worthwhile for the entire world community and local community. So that I can see that happening if it becomes as successful as you hope. And I think some of the things that are happening now in the world that are attributable to global warming should motivate people. And I know the younger generations are more motivated than, say, my generation. Although we came out of the '60s, we were fighting for things too. We were fighting against the Vietnam War and whatnot, and fighting for equity for everybody, just like we're still trying to do today. Only it's a lot tougher because when we came out of World War II, the economy in the U.S. was just amazing, because the economy in the U.S. was the only economy that was really functioning in the world, because the war was fought everywhere else. And I think a lot of people of my generation are spoiled by that, and they can't believe that our prices are so high today, and but we also have much better health care. We have more better rights for women, so-called minorities, and everybody. Us white males are not totally in control anymore. It's a good thing. I agree with that. It's a great thing. I've gotten most of my best ideas from people who are not white males, frankly.
Yeah.
But mostly women of every
That's so kind of you.
ethnicity. Of every ethnicity. Well, women tend to be more progressive as a group, and more interested in programs like this, and saving the world, and trying to do something about making sure that it doesn't end in 25 years.
Well, let me just say something about that as well.
You're gonna take the floor? All right, go ahead.
It's okay with you.
This happens all the time.
As a woman.
As a woman, yeah, okay. I've said my thing as a man. No, I
just want to.
I can go to the men's room now, and I'll be back.
One of the things that we're struggling with right now is the shutdown of the waste energy facility in Hartford, and
Yes.
so what they're doing is they're transporting the waste out of state. And that is costly, and it's something that isn't good for the environment at all. But one of the things that we all hope that will help out with this is the fact that the organic waste will be removed from the waste stream, and that we won't have as much to deal with in terms of waste, actual trash that can't be recycled. And so tell us a little bit about, in terms of the impact for the sustainability, how this will work in terms of our policy, and why we should try and move this forward and give a donation to your organization as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so as I said, we want our food waste. It's about 40% of our landfill is food waste and food packaging. So that's another piece that's huge, is the food packaging, what we're putting it in. And so Click works with creating a bulk program for compostable products. So we purchase compostable products, which are those paper goods and things that food goes in, at Third Thursday, at Thread City Hop Fest and things like that. And the biggest barrier to purchasing for food vendors for purchasing those compostable products is cost. And so if we can purchase them in bulk because we have an account that can, then we can distribute that to our food vendors so that they can use compostable products. And then also just educating about food waste, right? Like how much you're purchasing. Click does a lot of stuff just on a financial perspective with our food businesses to try to not get them to purchase too much. And so reducing what we are purchasing, because again, another thing is just in our homes, 40% of our trash is our food waste of what we're purchasing. So if we can kind of support when we actually get the food, I mean, you know, there's a lot of waste that's happening just getting it to us. But if we can support where it's going once we have it and how much we're purchasing, that's going to make a huge difference in just educating our community about food waste and where it's going, and just being more aware of food and where it's going.
So in terms of the cost, I mean, one of the things that you're doing and was put in the Chronicle is that because you want to expand composting, which will save everybody money in the long run, and it'll save the environment as well. You're raising money for that. Tell us, how do we donate the money?
Yeah, so you can find it on clickwillimantic.com. You can find it on our Facebook page or our Instagram, Click Willie, Click Willimantic. It's the patron city is our link, and you can also find it. It was, sorry, I think it was the waste. Click patroncity.com and the community composting, Willimantic Community Composting Program.
Wonderful. And so one of the other things is how are we going to maybe connect with UConn at this point? You're connected with Eastern now. Mm-hmm. Can we get UConn? And what about the other communities that might be interested in doing this?
Yeah, so right now, because these big universities, they are required to compost.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, so there are composting. It's a little different. It's going to, because they can create such large amounts,
right?
They're able to, and they have the financial overhead to get it hauled. Mm-hmm. There is a location, I believe it's in Southington, that takes it and creates, I think, like a biofuel or something like that.
Yes.
And so that waste is going there. But then, so they are kind of doing their part in that, but I think we need to bring it locally.
Yes.
And I think it needs to be more local, because someone like a resident or a food business or anything like that, they can't pay those fees to get it hauled, and they're not creating enough mass of food waste to get it hauled, so it doesn't make sense. So in our local area, we just don't have the option, and that's kind of why Click created this pilot program to create a satellite site. But I think, I know Casella is moving towards that direction, and
Great.
They have food waste initiatives that are going on, and so we're kind of just communicating with them a lot. They know what we're doing, and they're supporting us in that until they kind of figure out how they're going to do it locally.
Well, one other thing that I wanted to mention is that, as I mentioned earlier, is that Representative Foster, who is in the represents Ellington, went and she did the composting with the farm waste, which is organic.
Yeah.
And she is generating in farms now an opportunity to generate energy from that. And I didn't know if, because you're connected with farms with Click, to bring the food to Click and create these businesses for food, that you had been connected also with the sustainable energy side as well for the composting waste.
Yeah, so farms do a great job of composting. And so I think just supporting the farms in composting is the best thing, because some have animals, and that's actually the better way than even composting, is to feed it to the animals. And then the next way down is to bring it to the compost. And I think just policy supporting farms to compost on site is kind of the best direction to go. I wish that Click could take all the compost, but even internally at Click, we have food businesses and farms. And I have been noticing that they're communicating. And for example, our Red Lion Burger had some extra buns that had been outdated. They gave it to Good Farm, who has pigs. And there's kind of this connectivity that's
Wonderful.
happening at Click.
Woo, that's great.
Yeah, and that's how we're kind of a cooperative. We're really communicating with
Nice.
each other. And yeah, I think it's really important for farms to compost, and I know they are all on board. And so policy supporting that is really important.
Excellent.
It's almost time for our mid show break, but I just wanted to say, you mentioned Casella. I was thinking about that. Because, for years when, DeVivos ran the Willimantic Waste, Tom is our next door neighbor, and he's also our mayor. And, we started, separating. That must have been 20, 25 years ago now.
Oh, when I chaired the Mid-Northeast Recycling Operating Committee.
That's right. I'm taking your story again.
1989.
I didn't do anything.
I was made the
but
chairman.
I was aware of it, and I recycled. And then,
He used to
but anyway, we
he
started.
had a Mid-Rock song he
we
would
have
sing
two
before I go to
bins.
the meetings.
Here we go. We have two bins, one for recycling and one for everything else, so-called trash. Now, why couldn't we do it with 3 bins? And Casella does it under contract with the town.
Yep.
And so in Mansfield, I don't think they have that. I think I was town attorney in Mansfield for several years, and I think a lot of people hire their own haulers, individual homes and stuff like that.
For all waste or compost? For all in recycling?
I thought everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think Casella is pretty prominent
In Mansfield now. Okay,
Yep.
I haven't been town attorney there for 10 years now.
Yeah.
So, but I was surprised to learn when I was up there. Never had any dealings with them legally, but I was surprised to learn that it wasn't, a uniform system with a vendor, and everybody had the same vendor.
Yeah.
Which I think is much better, as
Yeah.
long as you're not, you're getting a good price.
Yeah.
As long as the town's not getting ripped off.
I also know that the town dump in Mansfield does take food waste, and so they have a food waste for Mansfield residents.
Yeah.
But we don't have that in Willimantic and Wyndham.
Well, we'll have to talk to.
Well, you know why?
Why?
Again, because there's nobody here to hire to make sure that it's all just food waste. You have to
Right.
make sure it's all food waste. So
Yeah.
until you're ready to get that taken care of,
Yeah.
here it's the cost to our town
Mm-hmm.
is going to be a problem, and Mansfield doesn't have the financial problems.
No,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
They don't. No, they
Okay. Okay. So that's what you're saying when you say that. You have to really understand where we are.
don't. Well, I'm just brainstorming.
Well, you didn't listen to what I said before about making sure that the
I
waste
didn't
is
listen.
clear.
Come on, I listened to you.
Chelsea was saying how she's been making sure that it's clear for
Yes.
Click, and
Right.
she's been doing that work.
All right, our producer Matt Rupar is giving me the fish eye and saying it's time for our mid-show break, so our sponsors can be recognized, and we certainly appreciate our sponsors. And I want to name, of course, Gates. The Gates.
Absolutely, they're
Yeah,
great.
the two Gates organizations here, locally and all over, actually, Northeast Connecticut. Gates has sponsored our show now for 20 years or more.
Wow.
And keeps us on the air, having great shows and great guests like Chelsea Charrier from Click. And we'll be right back with Chelsea Charrier and Susan Johnson and Matt Rupar and maybe a little Dennis O'Brien after this
I
words
think we'll
from
get
our
a lot of
sponsors.
Dennis too. Welcome back, everyone. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with my co-host Dennis O'Brien and our very special guest.
And where am
This
I?
is-
Where was I born, Susan?
You're interrupting me.
New
Dennis.
Britain, Connecticut. New
Our
Britain,
very
Connecticut.
special guest, Chelsea Charrier, and from Click. And this is our community licensed kitchen. And they are doing wonderful work with making sure they have opportunities for people who want to get involved in restaurants and in that business. They can generate all kinds of different food products, but they're also now looking at creating a more sustainability with respect to organic waste and composting. And this is very exciting, and they're raising money. And so tell us again, Chelsea, how you're raising that money.
Yeah, so Sustainable CT has a match campaign going on, and they're matching 1.5 to every dollar that we raise. And this funding is to provide stipends for training our community members who will be educating and servicing our program. We want to purchase equipment for just creating a more easy, better composting program, and also just community education and training and education for waste diversion services for our community.
That's fabulous. And the other thing that I wanted to check in with you on is the fact that you're going to be at Third Thursday. We were just talking about it, right, Dennis?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And you're going
Thanks
to be
for letting me
collecting
say
some money.
something. Okay.
Yeah, so this Sustainable CT Match campaign is over on August 18th, which is a week from today, this coming Friday. And so at Third Thursday, our Waste Not tents, there's 3 that are located in the middle of Main Street during Third Thursday. And at every one of those Waste Not tents, we will be accepting donations through a QR code or monetary money donations to kind of help raise and as much as we can until that Friday deadline.
And I know you're very devoted to the idea of composting, and you're actually involved in making sure that the composting waste that is collected on Third Thursday is actually done properly, because sometimes people don't watch where they put their waste products and they mix it in with a composting. Tell us a little bit about what you have to go through to get rid of that.
Yes, it is messy work. We are shoulder knee deep in trash trying to sort it and make sure it's not contaminated. And at every Waste Not tent at Third Thursday and other community events that have our Waste Not tents, we have community advocates that are volunteering right now to kind of make sure that all that food waste is going in the composting and the recycling is getting recycled properly, and to kind of eliminate what's going into our landfill. And right now they're volunteers, and this funding is going to help pay those people because it's messy work, it's hard work, and those people should be supported so that they want to keep doing it, because this is really important work.
And we want to be able to educate everybody to make sure that if they do start to do the composting, as we all hope we will be doing soon, that we do not make mistakes when we throw things away. That we put only the composting organic food, just your food, goes in that composting pile. And then you only put your recycling in the recycling bin, and then finally the trash. And this is going to save us a lot of money in the long run.
Yes.
But it's going to be very, 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 very hard to start, because people have a hard time remembering what to do. Because look, I remember back in the day when I was chairing the Mid-Northeast Recycling Operating Committee and also the Utilities Committee, and I was in charge of all the garbage. And so what I did is I just wanted to make sure everybody knew exactly what they should be doing. And how they should be source separating the stuff out. Not putting any dirty cardboard in with the clean cardboard. All these things are very, very important. And we really need to make sure that we reinstitute some educational programs, maybe even go through the school system and drop off some of this material starting in kindergarten, so the little ones will know as they grow up what they need to do, because it's really important for us to keep the stuff source separated. Saves a lot of money and time, and it's something that if we're going to go to sustainable organic composting, then we're going to really have to be spot on in terms of our understanding of what we're doing.
Absolutely. We're creatures of habit, right? So
yes,
starting in the schools is the best place to start, because starting it early and making sure people have those habits is really important.
And speaking of schools, I want to do the Farm to School program. Tell us how that's going. And I love that. We were talking about it just the beginning of this week. I was with Governor Lamont, and we were talking about farm to school assistance in terms of the idea of how we're going to give more money for school lunches and breakfasts and that sort of thing. So give us a little bit of a heads up on what's going on with that.
Yeah, so the Farm to School Collaborative is working to make sure that it's connecting people to policy and making sure that state agencies, nonprofits, and professional organizations support the Farm to School initiatives across Connecticut. So we're a part of that Farm to School Collaborative, where a lot of that policy is happening, a lot of talking to our representatives, talking to our government officials about the importance of farm to school initiatives. Click, personally, we just received a Food Vision Prize from which was from the Henry P. Kendall Foundation, and that's in partnership with EastCon. And EastCon has a lot of different schools in our state and in our region, and so that's our first partnership to start buying local and distributing local produce into those schools, which will be kind of our first foot in the door to that farm to school initiative for Click.
Yeah, that's excellent. What about the agricultural program at E.O. Smith? Are you connected with them as well? I know that they have an agricultural tech school there, and a lot of they come before us. I'm on the education committee at the Capitol, and so they come before us, talk about what they're doing. I know that they do have an economics aspect to that, and actually, my cousin is an agricultural economist. But those are. I mean, there's a direct line to how this all fits in with the economy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to E.O. Smith, so I had a lot of friends that were in the ag program.
Uh-huh.
I am not familiar with currently what they have going on, but that's obviously a place that we should connect to. I do know Wyndham Community Food Network supports their gardening program as they grow plants and things like that. Wyndham Community Food Network rescues those plants at the end of their plant sales to then distribute at Veggie Stock for free to people in the community.
That's fabulous. Very, very good. So I do think that the farm to school, and then of course Click's Food Vision Prize in partnership with EastCon's Farm to School Collaborative, and you mentioned a little bit about that, but maybe you could go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so we received a $200,000 prize to expand our processing capabilities. So we're actually starting construction of a processing kitchen. This processing kitchen will be at our organization to help farmers, local farmers, support local food to students in Connecticut. Basically, in Connecticut or in the northeastern part of Connecticut, we have a lot of small, mid-sized farms, but one farm can't meet the needs of a school.
Right.
So what Click is doing is bringing several local small farms together as a single point of aggregation to procure local produce from all these small farms. So then they do have access to that market of schools. So altogether, if we bring 5 or 6 farms together, they can supply that 1,000 pounds of carrots that school might need, as opposed to one farm that wouldn't be able to do that. So Click's kind of acting as that aggregator, that food hub, where all the local farms can bring their produce to then expand their markets into institutions, hospitals, schools, and things like that.
I'm psyched. I'm really psyched to hear that, because one of the things when Click first started was one of my hopes that this would be a direction, and I did talk to Phoebe about it back in the day, because one of the things that they do in upstate New York is they have their agricultural programs in upstate New York go to their university systems, so they are able to supply food to their university systems. So they support their local agriculture. They don't buy from out of the area, and it's a good way. I mean, it's right now in Connecticut, it's a $6 billion business, and one of the things that scares me is the fact that in this state we only keep a 3-day supply of food, and so if we ran into supply chain problems or some type of disaster, that would be it. Yep. So making sure we sustain our agriculture here, keep it going, keep it growing. No pun intended, but I guess there was a pun there. Growing, get it?
Well, we saw that during COVID, right? That supply chain.
Yes, we did. And we're still seeing it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where people started to understand not that everybody didn't, but it was hard to get people on board with Click and understand what we were really doing. And that's supporting the local food system and supporting a local, just, sustainable food system. And so that looks like supporting our local farmers so that our food isn't coming from so far away not only is that terrible for the environment and, loses nutrient density and amongst a million other things, but it's also like, then we don't have it. I don't know if you remember during COVID, but the chicken was gone.
Right.
And so we had people calling Click and saying, do you know any farmers with chicken? And that's where things started to click, no pun intended, where
Good fun
people
attention. Really
started
good.
to understand that local supply chain. And that's kind of the direction that we've been moving in, as supporting farmers and becoming that single point of aggregation for many small local farms.
I think that given the uniqueness of what you do at Click, all of you, not just what you're doing as your specialist, but you're familiar with everything they do, but you specialize in certain things. And right now, you're focused on composting, and you're focused on the next third Thursday, and trying to raise some money so that we can support people who are helping to compost and take food scraps out of the waste stream, and use it for something useful, like fertilizer or something, or I think Click is doing so much, but Click is also so unique that one of the challenges you face is getting the general public to understand what you're doing and how you are benefiting the entire regional community.
Food economy, yeah.
The food economy, the regional community. You're trying to head off the effects of global warming. You're trying to limit it, and it is dangerous. And it is, I'm just worried about all these hurricanes they're predicting are going to be happening here, and I hope it isn't true. But the waters, I can't believe how warm the waters are getting in certain places in the world. It's really scary. It's just not. It's extraordinary, and we're losing control of it. And we really need to work on all different kinds of ways to limit it. And one way is composting.
Yeah.
And Click has got all kinds of great ideas. And I think Click really is some. I'd like to have you and others from Click on the show again to continue to publicize the great things you're doing for the betterment of everybody. So that is something that I would say is public relations is a real important part of what you do. So I'm hoping that everybody who's listening will tell all their friends and relatives and even people who are not their friends, acquaintances or whatever, to go to Third Thursday, next Thursday. That would be the August 17th.
Correct.
And look for the one of those three
Waste
tents,
Yeah.
waste tents, and bring your wallet and make a donation.
Or your phone.
Right. Well, can you take a credit card?
We have a QR code through Patron City.
Okay.
And you can scan the QR code at any Waste Not tent.
Okay, that's great. So come to Third Thursday and make a donation to Click, because they're doing great things to help you and to save our world. And every little bit counts. Every little bit counts. It's
Exactly.
a tough problem, and we're going to have to attack it from many different angles. And this is just one. But you can't just rely on somebody else to do it. It's
Yeah.
up to you. It's up to all of us. So please cooperate. Please help Click, and please help the composting effort that they're making. And you can do that next Thursday, at Third Thursday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Or maybe you can show up a little early, I don't know, or stay a little late. But those are the main hours, 6 to 9 p.m. right down here on Main Street. It's a great event. Great music, great people. Get a chance to see people you haven't seen in a while, and do some good.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
can also donate on patroncity.com/Willimantic Composting Initiative, and that's where you'll find all the information about our Sustainable CT campaign match.
Fantastic.
Very
Fantastic.
excellent. Very, very good. This is great. This is such great information, and it is something that's on my plate to try and work on with respect to policy. But this is, you got to have the ground. You have to have the base first, and you're creating the base for the policy.
Yeah, or at least
You
a
can't-
pilot program or an idea to show people how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. It can be really overwhelming to people, climate
Yes,
change.
yes.
But you have to start somewhere, and even a little bit makes a difference.
Of
So,
course. And just thinking that we would be able to have better fertilizer using compost instead of something that's chemically created. Really, and it'll be used here locally in agriculture that's grown here locally. That kind of those kinds of concepts, it makes, to begin with, I mean, eating food that is processed and grown here locally actually reduces your susceptibility to allergies because you have the resistance in your system from the food that you eat locally instead of something from far away that you don't ever get the little like types of pollen and those kinds of things. So
local
you've got that
honey.
exactly.
Yeah.
Local honey. You get all the local things that create the resistance, so you limit your allergies. So you might be reducing, any kind of medication you'd be taking for allergies if you start eating everything from locally grown. And the more locally grown foods we have and locally made composting, the better off we'll all be because we'll really be able to be healthier because we won't have as many medications trying to get rid of the allergies.
Yeah. And I come from a nutrition background.
Oh, great.
And, our soil is devoid of nutrients and minerals these days. And so when we use our compost, that puts nutrients and minerals back into our soil, which then puts it back into our plants that we're eating. And then that helps us so much.
It's fantastic. That whole cycle gets rebirthed
Exactly.
again. And that is really what we have to be able to do because, it's going to be great to be able to use locally created compost for your gardens and for agriculture, for our farms. All of these, and the farms are using it in
Yes,
some
they are.
for their work, but also they're generating electricity with some of it, and so it's just going to be, we're moving in the correct direction. We need to understand what more stuff to do. It's kind of a big education problem.
It is. It's a new way of life.
It is a new way of life for a lot of people, but it is a common sense notion in general and specifically, and we really need to do it, and really need to do a lot of things like it if this world is gonna last another X number of years, because it is getting scary.
It is.
It is. If you're not worried about it, you ought to be. And I'm not here to scare people, but look what's happening in Maui. I mean, look at the Canadian fires, that
all
we've been
summer
affected by.
All summer long.
Right. I mean, what is going on? And a lot of hurricanes are predicted, and everybody needs to do their part. It just can't be done, but you can't rely on the government, can't rely on the private sector. Every individual needs to play a role. Everybody, the government, the businesses, everybody, and it all starts with you.
Yeah.
And the Americans have been really, really good at adjusting to real difficulties, and now we're really being challenged again, and we have to pull together and do it right.
I want to add one more thing, and that is, this is how our great grandparents used to live, right? They had my grandparents had farms. They didn't have much in the way of waste. Everything was recycled and redone. Their gardening, everything was composted and done over. It wasn't like all this stuff. We've had kind of a luxury. We've been treated like little kings and queens, having all our stuff picked up for us.
Yes.
and we've got to get back to who we are, back to nature, back to how things work, and those kinds of sensibilities will really carry us quite far.
Yeah, I think following the way of our farms, our local farms,
Yes.
because they do it right. They live off the land, and they honor the land, and I think it's really important to follow the way of the farms.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, well, my mother grew up on a farm in New Britain, and I'll tell you what, it wasn't a commercial farm.
Yeah.
It was just a family farm.
Yeah.
And they just did their own thing, and that's what people did. And, we're pretty far removed from that now. And, we really need to start thinking about that and going in that direction. That's a really good point made by both Susan Johnson and Chelsea Charrier. And we're going to be winding up pretty soon. Any final words of wisdom for our audience, Chelsea?
Yeah, I hope I see you all at Third Thursday. It's our second to last. September is the final. So visit us at the Waste Not Tent if you want to learn more about the composting program that we're doing, and if you want to donate to our Sustainable CT Match Fund to kind of keep doing this for the community.
I want to just thank you, Chelsea, so much for being on the show, and thanks to Click for all the amazing work they've been doing. This is Susan Johnson. I'm here with Dennis O'Brien, and thank you again, Chelsea, for being on the show. And we hope to have people from Click and you back, Chelsea, at another show to tell us about the progress for composting.
Yes.
See you next week, everyone.
Thank you for having me.